40 seconds. 40 seconds seems like a quick amount of time, but 40 seconds can be a lifetime. Now, that was only 20 seconds, but sitting here, it seemed like an eternity. On September 26, 2002, 40 seconds changed the lives of thousands of people in northeast Nebraska. It took 40 seconds for 3 men to enter the U.S. Bank in Norfolk, Nebraska, and to shoot and kill 4 employees and 1 customer. 5 lives were lost in 40 seconds. 40 seconds for 3 men to kill 5 people and to leave the bank empty-handed. And for those 5 people, 40 seconds was the start of an eternity. Welcome back. I know it's been a little while, and I can see that I have like 2 little spooky eyes from my light. Sorry about that. It's been a while, trying to do some research and trying to get things situated, plus with the holidays and family things, I just get backloaded, and I'm really sorry about that. I'm going to try to be a little bit more frequent and go back to the weekly thing. I was also thinking about trying to do every so often like a quick 5-minute, 10-minute news snippet throughout the week. Certain things happen. It's like, ooh, that's an interesting little thing. So why not throw it out there just for people that might not know? So on with today's true crime. Norfolk, Nebraska is a quiet community in northeast Nebraska that has a population around 23,000 people. This is the home of comedian, host, man of the hour, Johnny Carson. It's not his birthplace, but it's where he grew up. A mass killing was the furthest from anyone's mind in this town. The bank robbery, if you can call it that, was planned weeks before the 26th. But in the end, like I said, if you could call it that, there was no robbery, just a massacre. At 8:47 that morning, police got a call from a citizen about an armed robbery at the U.S. Bank in Norfolk. Mere moments before this, 3 men walked into the bank. So at around 8:30 that morning, Gabriel Rodriguez entered the bank and looked around. He left immediately after and radioed his friends about the location of where the people were in the bank. And then he left. Jose Sandoval walked into the front of the bank and shot 2 employees and a customer. Eric Vela and Jorge Galindo went to the offices and shot 2 more employees. They also attempted to shoot a customer that started walking into the bank, but the customer was, I believe, wounded and fled, but escaped. The 3 men left the bank empty-handed and ran off on foot, as their driver was not there. When leaving the bank, they left 5 people dead or dying on the floor, and the 1 person injured. And there were still 2 other employees that were unharmed. They were supposed to steal an employee's car, but in the chaos they didn't, so they ran off. Now, a couple blocks away, they forced their way into a person's home and stole that person's vehicle. They left them unharmed. They went to where they were going to meet up with Rodriguez, but he was not there. So they fled town. About 15 miles from Norfolk is Meadow Grove to the west. That's where they ditched a car and stole a pickup. And they continued to take off and drive west. Eventually, they stopped for gas or food or something in O'Neill, Nebraska. And that's where they were ultimately arrested. Rodriguez was still free at this time. He was hiding out, but was terribly upset that he left his friends. He feels like he let them down, but he got scared when he heard the gunfire, and he took off. Initially, they were supposed to just rob the place, and it freaked him out that he heard gunfire right away. So he ran off to Columbus, Nebraska, which is about 45 miles south of Norfolk, and was talking to a friend of his down there. And the friend said, "Dude, you need to turn yourself over to the police." And he drove him back up to Norfolk. But he wanted to stop by his apartment so he could tell his girlfriend what was going on and that he probably wouldn't be seeing her for a while. And while he was talking to her over the news was his picture, which kind of freaked him out. And he said, "Okay, well, we need to get going." So he was leaving his apartment. Well, at the same time, the police had figured out that he was the 4th person involved and were heading over to his place. So when he walked outside, the police were already out there to arrest him. The tragedy doesn't end there. The next morning, on September 27th, 2002, Nebraska State Trooper Mark Zock took his own life. About a week earlier, he arrested Vela for carrying a concealed weapon. Unfortunately, Zock transposed 2 numbers on the serial number of the gun, and this failed to show that the gun was actually stolen. So he got released on a bond for having a concealed weapon. If this had not happened, if he would have put the thing in correctly, it would have shown that it was a stolen weapon and he would have been stuck in jail, and this massacre probably would never have happened. I believe that Zock couldn't handle that, so he ended up killing himself, which is very unfortunate. In the trial, Vela pled guilty, while Sandoval and Galindo went into trial. All 3 were found guilty and sentenced to death. It was later found that Sandoval also murdered Travis Lundahl and Robert Pearson in the year prior to the bank murders. So all 3 of them were found guilty and sentenced to death. Rodriguez was the only one that was not sentenced to the death penalty. In 2015, Nebraska lawmakers repealed the death penalty, which voters reinstated the next year. But attorneys now argue that those that were sentenced to death had been commuted to life sentences when they repealed the death penalty. And now to put them to death, they have to have a brand new trial. There hasn't really been any movement toward at least these three. I'm not sure about the rest of the people that were on death row, but it's kind of sad that just because of that, they have to put all the families through all the horror, and that again to put them back on death row. At the time that this happened, this was one of the deadliest bank robberies in at least a decade. And because of the severity of the crime, the Madison County Courthouse, which is a very small courthouse, they had to construct barriers and change most of its procedures because of the crowds that were there. And it's kind of funny to say, but they had to protect the criminals so they could be tried for murder. Many Hispanics in the community feared that white population would blame them for the killings, and the governor of Nebraska at that time, Mike Johans, said that the city needed to differentiate the three suspects from the rest of the Hispanic community. A lot of times when I'm doing true crime or talking about the horrors that happen out there, like school shootings and things like that, I always want to remember the victims. I don't care about the perpetrator's name or anything like that. So that makes it a little hard when I'm doing these true crimes because I have to say their names. But I always want to make a point to address the victims. The 4 employees that were killed were Lola Elwood, who was 43, Joe Mosbach, who was 42, Lisa Bryant, who was 29, and Samuel Sun, who was 50. The 4th person killed was a customer, 37-year-old Yvonne Tuttle, and Trooper Zock. Elwood had worked at the bank for 14 years. She was a wife and mother of 2. Mosbach lived in Humphrey, Nebraska, and was a sports fan that was involved in bowling. She was a wife and mother of 2 also. Bryant was a personal banker who had only gotten married a month before her death. She worked for the bank for 6 years. Son worked for the bank for 8 years. He came from Hong Kong and has lived in the States since 1971. And Tuttle was a mother to 3 daughters and worked as a newspaper editor in Stanton, Nebraska. It was a sad situation for many in the area. There was a manhunt for a while and put everyone on high alert. My wife had driven by moments after it happened, like when the police were arriving. She saw bullet holes in the Burger King and in the bank, in the windows. I was at a restaurant in Columbus, 45 miles away, as somebody said that we need to be on alert. And they were thinking about locking the doors because we didn't know. We didn't know if they're coming, where they're going at that time. Eventually, the bank was torn down and a memorial was built in its place. But unfortunately, there was some controversy behind that. As I always do, I always put pictures here and everything like that. So, oh, and now she joins us. From an aerial view, it's a star with circles on the points of each star. The controversy behind that is that the symbol for Latin Kings, a Hispanic gang, is a 5-pointed crown with balls on the tips. Now, some say that when you look down on top of a crown, a 5-pointed crown with the balls, it looks like a star with the balls on the tips. Some say that it's a conspiracy, of course, and some say that it's just terrible coincidence. I don't know, you have to be the judge of that. So on that day, 5 people lost their lives. A 6th one the next day. And the 2 other guys. So 8 people lost their lives. 3 people on death row, 1 in life in prison. All for 40 seconds worth of nothing. It's a sad situation. I hope that you're good to each other and take care. I will continue getting out things. Comments are appreciated. Likes are appreciated. Follows and subscriptions are very much appreciated. If there's something that you'd like me to do a story about, put it in the comments and I'll see what I can do. I'm trying to pick up on this and go a little bit faster. So, peace. Be good to each other.